One of the questions that I get asked most on this app is how I, as a hyperverbal autistic person, can tell the difference between when I'm over-intellectualizing my emotions versus actually processing them. And I just want you to think about something if you're the type of person that constantly tends to get stuck in cycles of rumination. First of all, and this is going to seem a little bit counterintuitive, but when it comes to the idea of getting out of your head, meditation is not the opposite of that. It is the equivalent. This has a lot to do with the way Western New Age spiritual ideology has kind of distorted the meaning of what actual meditation is. This idea that meditation has to mean sitting somewhere still and clearing your mind of all thought. But my point is that they are both forms of dissociation from the presence of the moment, which includes the distressing feelings that you're trying to avoid. Cyclical monotropic spiral rumination and this idea of even like OCD reassurance is a defense mechanism. Because when your body and your system feels threatened, you escape into your mind. A lot of people think about meditation the exact same way, as this way to detach from the now and dissociate, instead of grounding you not only into the present moment, but also your body. This is also why a lot of people tend to fall asleep when they meditate, because they have this idea that it's just about detaching from it. There's different types of meditation, but that's another video. My point is that many people use it as a form of dissociation, just like self-care can turn into escapism. Because we get so obsessed with these uncomfortable feelings that we think it's just about trying to get out of our head. But that doesn't mean that we're getting into our body. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to ground and integrate. Also this, you can't really just stop thinking a thought. Don't think about a purple elephant. Did you just picture a purple elephant unless you have aphantasia? That's what I mean when I say that nature abhors a vacuum. You can't just necessarily stop something. You have to replace it with something. That's why the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. It's connection to something else. You're treating the symptoms, not the cause. There's this understandable tendency, myself included, for us to try to clear our mind out of a ruminative spiral. Of course, while that feels better than being in the active downward spiral of rumination, do not fool yourself and think that that automatically counts as processing your emotions. Kind of like sweeping something under the rug. It's still there. You haven't really taken it out. Quite often trying to meditate in the midst of an uncomfortable emotion is the worst time to try to do that. Because to a certain degree, sometimes it's suppression as opposed to release. It's almost a violence to the abruptness of you cutting off the natural momentum flow of that emotional release. Because without even realizing it, you have yet again found another way to run away from the scary emotions that you were trying not to feel, which is the exact opposite of what you should be doing, which is leaning in and running towards them. Our society is obsessed with trying to eradicate anger as opposed to channel it. The more you suppress something, the more of a ticking time bomb it becomes. That's why telling somebody to calm down and chill out when they're in the middle of a heightened emotion is never helpful. Quite often it would be much more advantageous to encourage a person in a heightened moment of emotion to run around the block or throw some ice cubes against the driveway than it would be to just calm down, however uncomfortable it makes everyone around them. So my point is that quite often opposites are equivalents. We're wired a certain way, and it's never going to feel natural or comfortable for us to lean into those uncomfortable emotions. But that's what makes it processing those uncomfortable emotions. Again, that is a big part of why we ruminate, because it's safe. The funny thing is that meditation actually can be a really great way to process emotions, but not the way that most of us in the society conceptualize it. Moving meditation based on the sensory awareness that brings you into the presence of the emotions that will come and go, and the thoughts that will come and go, feeling those things, processing those things, allowing those things, releasing those things, but not just trying to clear your mind and push them away. You know, a lot of people meditate without even realize that they're meditating, in the same way that a lot of people are spiritual without even identifying as spiritual via special interests and hobbies. But again, especially with the way a lot of us think about meditating, are you doing that to clear your mind, or are you doing that to come closer to the things that you are afraid to acknowledge? That's also the thing about rumination and monotropic spirals and perseveration. You know, for anyone that's autistic or BPD or whatever it is, your brain will constantly try to find ways to trick you into thinking that what you're doing is actually processing instead of just over-intellectualizing. I'm trying to keep my videos way shorter, but for me, how do I know that I'm over-intellectualizing and getting caught in that trap? I remind myself that processing emotions has nothing to do at all with thinking about them, trying to understand them, trying to justify them, trying to change them. It's dealing with the shitty emotions that I might have, no matter what, whether or not I think that I'm wrong or right for feeling them, whether or not I think someone else is wrong or right. I just feel what I have. And one more thing, you would be amazed, no matter how smart you are, at how good your brain is at internalizing shame that you feel, even though you consciously know there's no reason to feel shame or embarrassment. If you get frustrated about feeling a certain way because you know that it's you and you know that it's irrational and you don't want to feel that way, that is shame over feeling something that you just feel. How you feel is how you feel. How you look is how you look. How you sound is how you sound. How you feel is how you feel. For a really long time, I actually thought that I never experienced any internalized shame or embarrassment over things because I'm smart and I knew that there's no reason that I should feel shame or embarrassment around needing to unmask and like do certain things around the house. Just because you are aware of the fact that you are indeed the awareness of your experience does not mean that you are also not a little bit the physical embodiment of your experience as well. We start getting into this idea that there is something less spiritual about the body, trying to compartmentalize the physical from the mental, then from the emotional, literally the definition of not integrating as a whole. That's what we're aiming for. I'm really bad at this. When it comes to processing emotions like sadness and especially anger, anger is the stepping stool to other emotions. It's not a couch. We're not going to stay there forever, but it is an emotion that liberates us into more freedom. But if we think about it as something that we should never touch, then we're never able to move up the ladder because we have nothing to grab onto. It's there for a reason. It's there to get us out of bed sometimes. And that's where the trap of rumination quite often happens is we feel anger, whether it's valid or not, and we talk ourselves out of feeling it because we don't know if we should feel it. But then we remember that we should feel it because that's how we feel and we can't not feel it. But then we talk ourselves instead of feeling it, processing it and releasing it through the body, through physicality. For me personally, almost 99% of the time, when I finally actually start processing anger and emotions like that, it's almost always grief that hasn't been acknowledged. And let's be real, of course, it will quite often take more than just occasionally screaming into your pillow to process these deep, complicated feelings. But that's a start, you know? A lot of times the only way around something is through it, you know? When it comes to the difference between being able to tell if I'm just over intellectualizing my emotions or if I'm actually processing them, it's always going to be the difference. And it's tricky sometimes of being able to tell whether you're trying to make excuses, understand, think of, push away, validate emotions, as opposed to just feeling them. I'm sure this probably didn't help at all.